about you. All is good, I am ready to move. All is good, I am ready to groove. All is good, I am ready to move. When we dance, I've got nothing to prove. All is good, I'm ready to move. All is good, I'm ready to groove. All is good, I'm ready to move. When we dance, I've got nothing to prove.
It's party time. What's up? That is some real weird live streaming energy. Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. That's not what this is all about. Hello, welcome. My name is Rebecca, and this is my watch party. It's gonna be good times. I'm gonna bring my guest on here in just one moment. But I am super excited for tonight. We're gonna be watching 2 episodes of The Twilight Zone. You can watch that on Hulu or Netflix. So pull up your Hulu or your Netflix on one side, and then you have this video on the other side, and then you can watch both at the same time. We're gonna add our own commentary. I have a bunch of fun random trivia and little like, oh, they didn't notice that this little thing happened. Fun little bits like that, nuggets, if you will. It's gonna be good times. I've been doing this on Thursdays. This is my 4th episode. Yes, I believe it's my 4th episode. Last week had The Good, the Bad, the Weird, a fabulous kimchi western from South Korea. That was awesome. The week before that, we had Labyrinth, classic 1986 film. And then we started the whole series off with But I'm a Cheerleader, because, you know, that's how I roll. This is definitely like a community thing. Post in the comments. Drop your chats in there. I can put them on the video like this. There's Hasani dropping the link for Netflix. Make it easily accessible. Woo! We love convenience, don't we? Tonight's stream setup is going to look a little bit different. I'm experimenting with a different setup where we can use Zoom with virtual backgrounds, and I can customize things a little bit more. You know, we'll see. It's live stream. You got to experiment, try something new. Anyway, my guest this evening, we met. So the Sundance Film Festival has a collab program. Like, they offer classes that you can take online and events where you can go and watch like a Q&A with a director or a writer or something like that. But they also have started on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 11 o'clock for me in Austin, where you can just join in, and for an hour they give you a writing prompt, and everybody just gets on Zoom. And then you read the prompt, and they drop some links in there for ways you can like learn more about the prompt and get more engaged in the prompt. And then you just write for an hour, and then they send you into breakout rooms for 30 minutes to just chat with like a few other writers and get to know people. And I met my guest for tonight in one of those breakout rooms. The subject of horror films came up, and he was like, well, as a matter of fact, because I told him, I was like, I don't really like horror films, but I loved Get Out. I thought I didn't like horror, and then I saw Get Out, and he was like, well, let me tell you about Get Out and how much it actually pulled from Rosemary's Baby, and then there's these ties to this other thing and this and that, and I was just like, keep talking. And then it happened again. We were talking about a specific writer who is a very big deal in Hollywood, and he was like, oh, all of his films have this element in it that is just not, it's not a quality you want necessarily in films. And I was like, oh my gosh, it feels so nice to know that even big deal professional writers out there have things that they're not great at. It makes me feel like I don't have to be perfect at everything to stand a chance of breaking in. So that felt really nice. So anyway, he's a delightful human, and he is just like this fountain flowing of information, a fountain flowing of film facts. Why not? Everybody loves a good alliteration. His proper bio, I'm going to do a short version of it. He's an interdisciplinary artist. He literally is an artist who draws, not like I'm in the arts, but I can't draw to save my life. He's an artist. He's a filmmaker. He's a writer. He's a photographer. He is an educator. He has a master's in television, film, and new media from San Diego State University. He teaches several drawing classes and film classes, which like seems like if I had him as a film teacher, I would have been like, I'm gonna be a filmmaker. That's the only option. He has, participated in Art Produce Gallery's 2020 Artist in Residence program, where he launched his new series of mixed media drawings titled Strange Fruit. There are some links in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a bunch of links to check out Strange Fruit, some things that have been written about Strange Fruit. His website is there. You can check out more of his drawings, his details, his stories. And he has a new short film called Book of Skin that is currently in post-production. Please welcome, and give me a second to bring him on because my setup is totally different and weird, but we're going to make it work. My guest, Neil Kendricks. Did we do it? We did it. You're on. Can we hear you?
Well, hi everybody. Yeah, it's a delight to be here.
Oh,
Um,
how are you?
So there's a slight echo, but I'm doing fine.
Ooh, okay, let's see. Let's see.
Are you hearing that?
No, I don't have an
Okay.
echo, but that is definitely a very potential thing. Did that help with anything? No? Hello? Maybe?
No, it's like overlapping voices.
It's me coming twice. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
I want that to go. This doesn't need to be used. How's that? Is that any better? Muted. This can. Ooh. Yeah, that can be muted. How about now? Still echoey?
Yeah, it's
Oh man, what happened?
yeah, I don't know. I think we actually entered the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, we're kicking it off with the Hassani. Can you hear? Hassani is my moderator here in the chat. Does it sound echoey to you? Is it coming through the feed or is it just a Zoom issue? It might just be a Zoom issue. Give me 1 second. Let me.
I have no idea.
It is most likely me. There's not an echo on Twitch. Okay, so let me make sure. I have this crazy audio mixer software on my computer, and so it's great because I can do some really cool stuff with it. But sometimes the more options you have, the more likely you are to just completely throw something out of whack. Okay, let's try something. We're gonna experiment. We're gonna switch over to auxiliary. This one. Okay, is that any better? Hello?
Yeah, that's okay. Much better. Okay.
Hey! Okay, cool. That's exciting.
I mean, there's a delay there,
Perfect.
but
Excellent. We love a delay. There's nothing wrong with a little delay on the internet. Hassani, how are you feeling? Are we in sync? Or do both of our voices seem to be relatively close? We're just gonna have to roll with it, but I can keep working on it for the next stream, and so it just gets a little bit better every time. Cool. Okay, so first, how are you? How's your day been?
Okay, I'm trying to figure out which voice. Okay.
Oh!
Yeah. Well, my day was pretty nice. Yeah, it's like I'm talking over myself because.
Do you hear yourself feeding back?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me see. Okay.
It's like a hall. It's like a sonic hall of mirrors.
Weird. Okay, I'm gonna try. Give me 1 second. Let's see.
Okay.
All right. Usually, I don't have a problem with my audio feeding back because I have I have one of these microphones, but maybe it's just picking up the audio from my speakers. Who knows? Let's try this and see what happens. Let's try. Okay. How about now? Now try talking.
Okay. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Is it still echoey?
Yeah. It's like I guess it's still a bit of a delay. I mean, is the
Zoom might have to leave the Zoom and call and come back in if it's a Zoom problem.
Or would it be easier to go? Is it? It's hard to talk because my own words kind of go over me.
Okay, hang on. So try this. Go. You can still hear me, right? Give me a thumbs up. I have you muted. Yeah. Okay. Try. Oh no, I don't know what I was even gonna say. Okay, wait. I'm unmuting you. Let me. Man, I really don't know why it's coming back at you. Let's try this. Leave the Zoom and come back and just see if maybe that'll do the trick. Okay, we're gonna experiment. We're having a great time. I'll see you in a minute.
All right, I'll be right back.
Okay. Fingers crossed. Blame Zoom. So the problem is we can't use the virtual background in StreamYard without an actual green screen. And he doesn't have a green screen, but he's got other people that are going to be moving around. And so he wants to have the virtual background, which does work in Zoom, but it doesn't work in StreamYard. So we can't have video if we're in StreamYard. So hopefully this works out. We'll see. Okay, he's coming back in. He's coming back in. Okay, I'm going to close that.
Okay.
Okay, any better?
Yes. I mean, it's
No.
I think it might be better to use your studio and just not have the video.
Yeah.
Because
What if okay, try this. Mute yourself here. See if you can join on the studio. This might get really weird, but we're going to just see what happens.
would it be too difficult to do the studio and just have the virtual photo?
No,
I mean, because I can't
fine.
make sense of what I'm saying because I'm literally hearing an echo of myself.
Yeah, you're fine. Okay, wait. So let me do this. So, oops, now we've got the wrong side. Hang on, wait. Let me do this. Give me 1 second real quick, Neil, and then we'll switch over the other way. All right, so stop video, start video. Okay, now you're back. Hey, all right, everyone. So this is Neil's lovely face. His face is going to go away, and then his voice is going to come back, and it's going to sound like angels. And then you're only going to be able to see my face and then his picture, but that's okay. The most important thing is to be able to hear us talking through all the stuff. So it's going to be great. All right, come back over. Yeah, leave Zoom. I'll see you over on StreamYard, okay?
Okay, so use the original link.
Yep, same link. Same
okay.
link. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Moving to Twitch. Hey, DR, welcome. This is wild. I blame Zoom too, because it shouldn't. The only thing that is feeding in between, yes, DR, I will take all of the views. The only thing feeding between, like audio, the only thing going from my computer into Zoom was my voice. So I don't know, but maybe, I bet because it was sharing. I know why. It's because I was sharing computer sound. I bet I know how to fix it, but I don't want to mess with it. So, Neil, your camera is on. Are you comfortable with that, or do you want to have the camera off? You decide. I can't hear you. Okay, now you're back. Okay, now I'm going to add you to the stream. Now can I hear you?
Yeah,
Are you
I
muted?
can hear you.
Uh-oh, now I can't hear. Oh, I know why I can't hear you. That's my own fault. That's because this. Okay, now talk.
Okay.
Hey. Okay, good. Now I can hear you.
Yeah.
Chaos, I tell you.
It's still like it's like 3-4 people talking at the same time.
What? Even now?
Yeah. Is it? I'm not sure what's going on.
That's so weird. Okay, hang on. Give me 1 second. Is it fine when I'm talking? Is it just when you're talking?
No, it's like you have an echo. It's like you say something, then as you're still talking, another echo of it overlapping.
Yeah,
so it's
I
almost
know what you
unintelligible.
mean. This is weird. This has never happened before. Okay, I don't have the show open and running anywhere. That's working. Okay, so I'm on Vio. Sorry, folks. Stick with me here. We're going to make this work. I'm actually surprisingly good at this software. It's just sometimes it throws surprises at me, and I have to work on the fly, get creative. Okay, we can mute that because I don't need that right now. This is me. Okay. Is that any better from my voice? A little bit. Hello.
It's still a little bit better.
Are you don't have the stream open, do you? Like YouTube or Twitch or anything?
Oh.
I mean, I can't imagine that would be a little more of a delay.
Yeah, I'm gonna just close one of those. Is this better?
I don't know. Is it better?
Yes. Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
I can.
All right. Okay.
We do it?
I think we figured it out. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay. All
All
right.
right.
I got to do one last thing. I got to get my timestamp back in the zone, and then we're going to get this party started.
Okay.
Neil, tell me something you're excited about while I'm doing this.
Okay. Well, I'm a lifelong fan of the Twilight Zone. So when you suggested this show as a kind of a way for me to be a guest, I jumped at it because I've been watching Twilight Zone since I started watching it when I was in junior high. I've always been interested in science fiction, and specifically science fiction that offers social commentary. So to this day, and I still think that the Twilight Zone is the best piece of speculative fiction ever on television. And I think what you have to do is you have to get past the fact that the visual effects are dated, and some of the production value obviously is dating back close to 60 years. I mean, Twilight Zone celebrated its 60th anniversary back in 2019. But it's what makes it stand apart is it's the quality of the writing and storytelling, and how Rod Serling was able to work with the limitations of television in that era to deal with serious issues through the lens of fantasy and science fiction. And I like to think of it that he's using genre as a kind of Trojan horse to smuggle in potentially some subversive ideas or challenging ideas or controversial issues that if it wasn't fantasy and if it wasn't science fiction, the censors would have stopped him. So it was all a ruse for him to talk about things that he felt were relevant.
That's awesome. So, I think especially with like the eye of the beholder, like that theme is so clear that it's like anybody watching that episode would be like, I can't believe this is crazy that people would treat her like this. But then it's like, but we literally do that in the world all the time. So I think it's interesting. Okay, Neil, my only other question then, how do you watch this show with me? Were you able to find it on wait, here, I can. Okay, so Neil, in the right corner on this StreamYard page, there's a comments and there's a private chat.
Okay.
I am going to give me one moment, and I'm going to drop the link in that should take you directly to the Netflix. So give me 1 second. I've got this copy link address. Okay, so go to the private chat. Paste.
Okay.
Oh, nope, don't click on that. That's not the one.
Okay. So is it going to take me away from this screen though? Like
if you right click and then open in a new tab. Let me see. Is that going to work? I don't think that that's correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not that technical.
Is it going?
Okay, let me see what happens. So
let me try.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work because it has just a ... Let me pull it up on Twitch.
Okay. I think I lost you. Let me see. Okay, now I see it. Okay.
Okay, copy link address. All right, this one in the chat. All right, click that one.
Or should I try to copy it and take it to a new another
Either way. I think if you right click the link and then open in a new tab, that should be fine. Hassani, was the link for the Netflix, is that for a specific episode or is that just for the whole series?
Okay,
hello,
so yeah,
David
it says
Kendricks, welcome.
Open link to new tab. Okay.
Yep. Perfect. And then what does that take you to? The whole series or one of the episodes?
Let's see. It takes me to the whole series, but then I lose the image. So maybe what I'll do is let me copy this and try it in Safari.
Okay.
And what I might have to do is that it's kind of behind your screen. And we'll see if this works. Okay, so it's letting me go. Okay, so it's oops. So it's taking me to the Howling Man.
What?
It didn't take me to
copy link address. Okay, let me try again. Hang on. Private chat. Okay, this should be the one that ends 57859. Should be Eye of the Beholder.
Okay, let's try it again.
Is everybody having fun in the audience?
Yeah, it takes me to like an intro page, and it just says Twilight Zone, the original series, and then 4
Weird.
seasons. Yeah, so it's
Okay, so in Netflix, then where it has the season, you should be able to do the season drop down and then select season 2.
okay. Let's try it again. Okay, I think it wants me to sign in. So
Oh yeah.
this is,
I'm gonna let you pull that up. I had a fun my little bit of joy today is I put these guitars up, and I put a couple of pictures up on that wall that have been just sitting around for a long time waiting to get put up. I was having a bad day. It's just like a lot of frustrations and stresses, and I was like, I just need something happy. And I was like, I keep knocking these guitars off of their stands.
okay,
all right, so are you signed in?
Yeah, I'm going to, okay, so it says it's still taking me to the Howling Man. It's not allowing me to go to the episode you're talking to. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, hang on. If I open this, what happens? I don't have oh. No, yeah, it should take you right to the episode. I don't even think you have to click open in another. If you just click the link.
Okay, let's try it again.
And see if it shouldn't take you out of here.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not that technical, and
it's okay.
Trying to do this in real time. Okay,
I know.
I'm trying to do this in an open link in new tab. Okay.
Okay.
But see, the problem is then if I go to that tab, I can't see you. So I guess I'll just try. Okay. Can you see me? But now it still doesn't take me to it. It's not allowing. No, it's not allowing me to go to the episode.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we'll try again.
Well, maybe we'll wing it and we'll just talk. It's like we don't have to necessarily do like specific, minute by minute coverage.
If you I know the episode really well. So if you could at least have the audio, I can kind of imagine what's on the screen.
I can't have audio because the audio will be in the video, and then it's a DMCA strike.
Oh, okay.
But I'll play it, and I'll just kind of talk you through it. And I think you will probably know it just from that, and we'll just talk about the episode in general. It doesn't, we don't have to get into at minute 7 and 38 seconds,
right.
It's more like the big picture that we're excited about. Cool. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to add in the timestamp, and I'm going to make the formatting look nicer like that. All right. So everybody else, if you're watching at home, you should have the episode pulled up and ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to do a countdown, and I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, and then we'll hit play. And again, this is season 2, episode 6, Eye of the Beholder. So if you are ready, great. If you're not, the timestamp is on the screen, so you can always just catch up with the timestamp when you get there, All right, so we're going to hit play in 3, 2, 1, play. Here we go. Rocking and rolling, living the dream. So of course,
so I'm assuming that
classic music.
So I'm assuming this is the intro sequence. I think it's like almost like a tunnel of light, or which intro? They had about 4 different intros.
A blurred moon, which is sort of, we see that later with the mask, the blurred moon, the little black bar going across the bottom.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that probably the signature intro to Twilight Zone is, of course, the opening door against the backdrop of stars. And I think this is one of the, this would have been, you said season 2? And so they changed it each season. So eventually we're going to be introduced to this shadowy netherworld of a character that is bandaged. And the camera, I believe, is going to be from above.
Yep.
Looking down at our protagonist. and there's a one light source which should be right above her.
It's like weirdly close to her face.
Yeah, so weirdly close to her face. I'm doing this by memory.
I know, you're right on track.
And so I believe a doctor or a nurse is going to come into the door.
Yep, the nurse is here. She's holding her hand, taking her,
she's
getting ready to
hand.
take her temperature.
Okay. She takes her temperature without, of course, removing the bandages. So she slips the thermometer just underneath a kind of overlapping bandage. This is my memory of it.
Yeah.
And what's wonderful about as the viewers at home listen to the way that the characters talk to one another, this is not naturalistic dialogue. Rod Serling came from, his background was in live television. And so in a lot of ways, you have to think of an episode like this as almost a piece of theater, a kind of television as surrealism. And so the dialogue is in some sense very literary. And I think he's able to get away with it because a lot of times stories, and specifically an episode like this one, is more allegorical, like it's symbolic.
Yeah.
Now we have to kind of think about when this show was originally broadcast. No one quite saw anything like this before.
Yeah.
And because the Twilight Zone is so famous, I'm sure most of the people that are watching this tonight kind of have a sense of what's going to be revealed at the end, the twist ending. I'm not going to ruin it for that one or two people.
The one person.
Emerged out of a cave today and caught your show.
Yeah. The Twilight what?
Yeah, exactly. And so at somewhere in this point, the doctor should be in the room, and they're talking about.
I thought it was really.
Describe what you're seeing.
So it's, the two nurses are now talking. She just paged the doctor to give an update. She's lighting a cigarette.
Oh, right.
But I thought, I didn't actually know fully what the twist was going to be until it happened. Like, I understood sort of the theme, but I didn't know what the twist was. But I thought it was just like a creative, we don't want to show their faces because it puts more importance on her face. You know, so I was like, oh, that's a very creative move. But then when the twist happens, it was like, oh, okay, I didn't actually expect that.
Well, you know what? You make a really good point, is that because the character is kind of living, in her own words, a kind of a private darkness, right? That it makes sense that she would not be able to see the faces, right?
Yeah.
So it puts us, in a sense, in her shoes by not being able to see the other characters milling about the space. And, one of the things, if they've shown the window that you see outside, the decor of the landscape is obviously artificial, right? And I think it's intended to be. I don't think it's meant to be something that you would look out a building of a hospital in the 1960s and expect to see. So I think Serling, in collaboration with his director for this particular episode, they want that to feel a sense of dislocation. You're not quite sure where you're at. I think the dialogue where the two nurses were talking about, and I think she asked something, did you see the face of the patient? And she says, I certainly did. I'd want to bury myself somewhere. I think that was the line.
Yeah.
And then the camera zooms in on the hand pushing some cigarettes across a counter, I believe. And Serling should be coming up right about now, I think.
He was just on screen.
He was just on screen.
I honestly, I don't know that I probably watched one episode when I was like a kid and it terrified me and I never watched it again. So when he came out and all of a sudden I saw his face, I was like, he talks. He kind of narrates this. He tells us what, it's like, okay, I got it now. I'm on board.
And, kind of what's interesting also about Serling's career is to give you some sort of, linkage to the present, is that he would be the equivalent of a showrunner that we think of with contemporary shows. However, that was very unusual back in the
Yeah.
time that this show came on. I believe the Twilight Zone was only on the air for maybe 3 or 4 seasons. So it's not a very long run for a show that then became as iconic as this one did.
Yeah.
And he wrote maybe 90, 94, 95% of the scripts. That's
Wow.
incredible. And for them to maintain the level of quality that you see season after season, you'd be hard pressed to find another show from this particular era or even after it, where the showrunner wrote this amount of this large number of scripts and have them be of such high caliber. One of the ways that he, in my research about him, because he's been like kind of a hero to me in terms of what he's done for science fiction, is his method of writing was he would talk into a tape recorder. And
I love that.
and he would, and in a sense, he would almost play the parts. So he would basically just do the dialogue directly into a microphone, and then I guess either someone on his staff would type it up, and then he would make revisions. And I think that maybe there's something to be learned from working this way, because he had the sheer output of scripts that he had to make and come up with. Would have crippled most writers and most producers, I think.
Well, I love that. I mean, I love doing like improv to script, and I love just seeing people it's like, let's just put it on its feet and see where it goes, and just trying it a few times. And for me, that fit like, if I haven't done stand-up comedy in years, but that's how I did it, is I'd be like, I want to tell the story about this thing that happened, and I would record myself telling the story, and I'd be like, great, now tell it again and make it 2 minutes shorter. And then it was like, and again, and I would just try to make note of like, oh, this little thing popped up that I didn't have the last time, so let me add that. Yeah.
So what are you seeing right now?
So the doctor is holding her and comforting her, because she knows that this is the last attempt. After this, 11 is the number. And after 11, you're not allowed to try anymore. Right.
And so, in fact, earlier in the same scene, I believe, he says, "Is this number 6 or number?" He deliberately.
He thinks it's 8 or 9. I think.
Yeah, he deliberately pretends that it's a lower number, and I've always thought that was his effort to maybe somehow fudge the facts to give her more chances. And it's her that I think, is it Janet Tyler is the name of the character? Yep. She says, no, it's number 11. And then 11's the anointed number. And then there's some dialogue, I think, where she talks about what if this doesn't work? And then he says, well, there's places where you can live among, people of your own kind. And then she has this outburst of my own kind. You mean segregated in a ghetto, right? And again, the daring to deal with the idea of segregation, to deal with the idea of conformity. So he's using science fiction to talk about the issues of the day. Earlier in Sterling's career, he wrote a script about the murder of Emmett Till, which was made national headlines in the 1950s. For those that might not be familiar with this awful chapter in American history, in recent American history, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old African-American boy who went to visit his family, his relatives in the South. He was accused of whistling at a white woman.
A white woman, yeah.
And to kind of give you a sense of the brutality of the times, her husband and some of his associates showed up at their relative's home in the dead of night, and with flashlights, and they had her point. They basically pulled him out of bed and it took him out into the darkness and tortured him to death.
Yeah.
And
well, Well, that
There
was
was a
basically how the Tulsa massacre started, the Tulsa riot. It was also a
well, this
black
is a
man supposedly
yeah,
said something inappropriate to a white woman in the elevator, and it was
yeah,
like it just blew up from there.
yeah. So Sterling wrote a script that was dealing with that incident, and he ran into an enormous amount of obstacles where the networks and the network censors basically changed his script to the point where it was not even recognizable. They changed the setting, they changed the
Yeah.
race of all the characters, and
They tried to make it more tolerable and more
well,
basically easier for white people to consume at the time. That it was like, oh,
right,
we can handle this story, but the reality of what happened would just be too much for
yeah.
them at the time.
And I think that one of the strategies that Serling, why he created the Twilight Zone, besides the fact that he was a fan of the genres, was that he knew that if he was under the ruse of science fiction, and instead of setting, say, a story in the Deep South, and you set it on Mars, or you set it in the far future,
Yeah.
well, then you can always say, well, I had no intent of it resonating or speaking to the problems of today.
Yeah.
It's fantasy, right? Well, of course, the subtext is that it's really talking about what was happening in the world at that time. And I think that's why the show is timeless, is that we're still burdened with a lot of these same problems. I like to think of Rod Serling as the writer as a kind of historical witness and a kind of reformer. He understood that television was an incredibly powerful tool, that this was something that went into not only into people's homes, but that it could shape opinions. And it did.
Yeah.
And so so being the smart, sensitive, open-minded, progressive that he was, he had to figure out a strategy where he could talk about the issues that he cared about. Issues like nuclear war, or the fear of nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war. I think Twilight Zone was one of the first shows to actually have an episode dealing with the Holocaust. I mean, it's told as a horror story, but it deals with going like the storyline. It's actually from the episodes. For those that might want to go check it out, it's called Death Heads Revisited, and it's a former SS officer who goes back to Dachau to kind of relive his glory days.
Yeah.
And Serling in his intro describes the character. I still remember, I love this show. His name is Schmidt, and he was, Serling describes him as a kind of goose-stepping monster. And the episode ends where Schmidt is confronted with all the buried guilt that he has because the ghost of one of his victims is sort of still standing watch on the grounds of Dachau. And the locals find this former SS officer screaming in pain, and essentially he's gone insane. And so the doctor is examining him, and he's saying, I don't understand. How can someone go insane in the space of 20 minutes or 30 minutes? And then he looks around at his surroundings, and he asks the age-old question, why do they keep it? Why do they let it keep standing? Why do they let it stand? And then Serling's narration pipes in, and he says, to answer the doctor's question, we must keep these places standing, because these are remnants of a time when a group of men wanted to turn the world into a graveyard. I still remember that line. Inside that graveyard, they shoveled all their conscience. And when we start to forget the Dachau, the Auschwitz, we become the grave diggers. I'm paraphrasing his eloquence. And I remember seeing these episodes and how they would stay with me. And so it was never about the production values. I think Serling might have been, and the Twilight Zone might have been the first show that I became conscious of the writer's role, that I understood that that somebody sat down and wrote this, and they put their heart and their soul into these characters, that they didn't just come out of the ether. And so what's on the screen right now, kind of swinging back to
so they're starting to remove the bandages, and this was actually the only continuity thing that I found. The other episode we'll watch, there's a lot more continuity things where they were like, here's the thing and here's it, but this is the only thing, is the direction that the doctor removes the bandages, but then when you see it from her point of view, it's going the other way.
Okay.
But, you know, I was like, that's a pretty small. I've been reading about being a script supervisor. So there's a lot of so I've been paying even more attention to continuity things. So anytime I see something, I'm like, okay.
So is the direction of the bandages, when we have the wide shots, it's always in the same direction? Are you noticing? I don't know. I don't remember that detail.
But it's where it cuts from like he's going to her right. And then when you see her view, the bandage is coming off the other way, and then it cuts back to him and it's going the other way again. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if we've gotten to that one or if I missed it just now, but
in defense of the show, like if they're cutting away to other things, one could say, well, maybe some of the bandages were in the other direction. So you know, but you know what? I mean, it's an error. But you never.
They're gonna happen in anything. I think it's one of those things that it's like you would just have to be like aggressively seeking it out to even notice it. Like, you know, it doesn't make a difference to the enjoyment of and the ability to like take in the story and enjoy it.
Now, at some point, as he's unwrapping the bandages, he's going to pause, and then I think he touches her shoulder, and he tells us, Mrs. Tyler, we've done everything we can. And, you know, a representative from the village will be coming to meet if this procedure wasn't successful.
Not a success.
And then she's like nodding her head, and she's like, I understand. And I love that little touch of, even though we're going to have the big reveal in a few minutes, that Serling makes a point of humanizing all of the characters. The fact that at one point earlier, the doctor is being comforted by the nurse, and the nurse is sort of warning him that he shouldn't get personally involved in the case. And he says something to the effect of, I've seen that woman's face, her true face. It's a good face. And of course, people don't speak that way. But I think that one of the things I love about Serling, and in the context of the Twilight Zone, is there's a kind of poetry to the way that he uses words and the way that he invents characters, and it's appropriate for the genre, I think. So
we're at the reveal. They're pinning her against the wall.
They're pinning her against the wall. They're turned away, and now they're going to
turn the lights on.
Turn the lights on.
And now we see his face.
And now he's turned to the camera, and now we see the terribly distorted faces that have been concealed in shadow for the last 20 minutes, right?
Yep.
And now she's shocked because she wants to be like them, right? And so she storms out of the room, and there's video screens that descend from the ceiling. And I think there's two or three.
The leader,
the leader, who was glimpsed earlier in a distance, but now we're finally seeing close-ups and medium shots, and we see that he shares the same distorted, almost pig-like face.
One of the facts that I found is that the hand movements that the leader uses are based on hand movements that Adolf Hitler used.
Oh wow! Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, but it's an obvious demagogue. There's been no shortage of demagogues for anybody who's been in America for the last 4 years, right? He who shall remain nameless.
No kidding.
But you know, this is the thing about this particular episode is Serling is tackling several different issues. I mean, he's talking about the desire to conform, the desire to fit in, the desire to be like everyone else. And he's questioning that, and he's saying that what makes us human is the differences. It's the element of being an individual. And then of course, by flipping our expectations of what is beautiful and what is ugly, right? I believe that's the same actress from the Beverly Hillbillies, for those television folks out
Oh,
there. And
maybe.
her dialogue is dubbed. That's not her real voice. It was another actress that did the dialogue for that.
There's actually, so it was a separate actress who did the voice when her bandages were on. And then that same voice actor was supposed to dub over the one line that she has here. But this woman had heard that actor recording so much that she could mimic her voice. So she just made her voice sound like, so she did get one speaking line.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I was like, that's wild. I would be curious. I would love to know like how they recorded it, because it almost seems like they could have filmed the whole thing where it was just like that they just recorded voiceover and then they played that back on set while they did it. Or did they have a separate voice actor standing by while the doctor said his actual lines and then she responded from here? I just like technically I would be fascinated to kind of see how
I'm not sure if they had ADR or automatic dialogue replacement back then, but it was probably done in post-production, I would think, like after the episode was edited, just so that they could kind of, because it's almost like a silent film when you think about it, because you don't see for the majority of the film, you don't see their faces when they're speaking. It's only in this end sequence where she's running, and then she runs into some sort of a waiting room. Is she there yet?
She's talking to the representative from the other community now.
Okay.
The like painfully handsome, chiseled jawed,
Right.
It was disgusting.
Yeah. Like, who was that really famous celebrity that was all about fitness in the 50s and 60s? And his name is escaping me. And
let's see if I can Google and find it.
But he looks kind of like that guy. And but his dialogue is also really effective, because I remember the doctor kind of helps her up, and he says, funny enough, you came straight to him, and he's a representative from the village that you're going to go live with.
Yeah.
And then Janet says something to the effect about why do we have to look this way? And I can't remember the name of the young man that's from the village that she's going to, but he tries to reassure her, and he's basically says that eventually she's going to have a sense of belonging, and that she'll feel loved, that she'll be loved. Yep. Where else on television, and at this particular time when this show came out, that someone was questioning the idea of beauty, the idea of acceptance, the idea of ghettos, of people being separated. These are all the touchy issues that a censor would not want. And because it's science fiction, well, that was their defense. But obviously in storytelling, the real story is always the subtext, the story underneath the story. And I think that Serling and his frequent collaborators, writers like Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont, who were also great writers in their own stature and in their own excursions into science fiction and fantasy, and are writers who I really highly recommend that you seek out their work, because they wrote some of the most memorable episodes of that weren't written by Serling. Matheson wrote, of course, Nightmare at 25,000 feet. It's the episode where William Shatner, soon to be on the bridge of the Enterprise, is a young man that is plagued with a really bad case of the jitters of flying, and turns out there's a gremlin on the wing of his plane. And that's one of the really famous episodes. Charles Beaumont wrote episodes like The Howling Man and The Doll with Talking Tina, which is a doll that takes revenge on an abusive father. Another great classic gem of an episode. And so at this point, I guess they're walking down the hallway away from the camera.
It's pretty much over now.
Oh, it's over. Okay. Well,
but they did, they walked hand in hand down the hallway, and like you do get sort of that feeling of peace, like
Yeah.
at least that it's like she's got someone. She's
Yeah.
holding hands with someone who is not disgusted by her. So you're like, at least she's got something.
Yeah.
Um,
And then of course
there
you have Serling's narration at the end where he's like, well, when is this taking place and where? Is it now or 100 years hence? Well, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter, because the old saying happens to be true. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I know the dialogue of this episode, and I've seen it so many times, and it never gets old to me. I think that there's a great archived video clip of Serling talking about the art of writing and the art of storytelling. And he says, when I'm asked, how do you write? Well, it's easy. You sit at a chair, you pull up to your typewriter, you roll up your sleeves, and you bleed. And I think that is so true. And he definitely, from the quality of these stories, is you can see that he really bled for each of these stories that he wrote, and put his whole 100% of his spirit and his social conscience. He was a brave and an incredibly brave storyteller in a very intolerant time. Yeah. And I think he's a great example for all the storytellers out there that are listening to this show, that he's a great example of the importance of stories, the importance of literature, the importance of art, how it can illuminate different corners of the human experience. You know, I met the science fiction writer William Gibson when I was in college. And one of the things that Gibson told me was that good science fiction is always about the present. It's about looking through the genre, or through the lens of the genre. And the genre becomes a kind of distorted glass, as if you were looking in a fun house. And by having the deliberate distortions, you get to see yourself or the society you live in more clearly. And I think that's why I'm drawn to science fiction, and have been my whole life. Why I love fantasy and horror is that in some ways they reveal things that realist fiction doesn't. And there's limitations to realism. But with fantasy, you can do anything.
I think that's similar. Like I love comedy to help tell dramatic stories. Like I want to see the story of an entire family where every single member of the family has their dreams just shattered into a million pieces, but we're so there with them because we're laughing the entire way. Like Little Miss Sunshine is one of my favorite movies ever. And it's like nothing positive really happens to any of them, but they're brought together through their mutual tragedies and through like being crammed into a tiny little van together. And you know, and I think it's kind of similar actually, that it's like, okay, how do you sort of like add the candy coating to the message that you're like, this is the important thing that I want to get across. How can I make it something people are excited to take in and enjoy? And then you kind of like sneak that seed in there. It's I think Hassani was saying like, it's like hiding a pill in peanut butter or something for your pets. That it's like,
And anything with Alan Arkin is going to be good. You know, I mean, that film is beautifully cast. You know, Alan Arkin and Greg Kinnear. It's a true ensemble, and in fact, the screenplay for that won the Academy Award, I believe. It won the Oscar. So it got rewarded for all the hard effort that was put into it. So have we started the next episode yet?
So we haven't started the next one. So a couple other things that I found about that last episode. So it was initially called The Eye of the Beholder, but there was a film at the time that was being sold to public schools that had the same name. They threatened to sue. Then they changed the name of this episode to The Private World of Darkness. But then that sort of complicated and confused things. So then they changed it back, but they dropped the. So it was just Eye of the Beholder. So there's still like the credits still vary depending on what version you see.
I actually have a funny story that is
Yeah.
kind of in the same era, but a much more well-known movie, I guess. When they were making Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's classic film from 1960, they decided they went through the phone book to make sure that there wasn't a Mary Crane that is in the novel Psycho. And they found out that there was a Mary Crane who lived in Phoenix. And apparently Paramount was so worried about like a possible lawsuit that they asked them to change the name without going back to the original author, Robert Bloch, because another writer wrote the screenplay. So they changed the name to Marion Crane. Unbeknownst to them, I believe Robert Bloch's wife is named Marion. And then, so you can imagine the dialogue when they went to see the film, to see the most notorious murder sequence in film history.
I swear, honey, it's not about you. It's not about you.
Right. And Robert
That's
Bloch
amazing.
wrote a memoir about it. It's called Around the Bloch.
Nice.
Bloch.
Yeah, that's great.
Actually, it was
great.
pronounced Bloch, but it's
Bloch.
spelled Bloch.
Yeah.
And he was a real aficionado of psychological puns. And if you ever want to invite me back after all the technical mishaps, I would love to watch.
Figure it all out.
I would love to watch Psycho.
Ooh, okay.
Because I think some of the use of cinematography that we saw in Eye of the Beholder is almost like a kind of expressionism. Everything's exaggerated. How they artfully displayed the range of shadows, where light would fall, and so forth, made it believable that the characters would be in shadow. Now, I'm sure there were viewers when this was originally aired that were probably going like, "Why aren't they showing the faces?" Right?
Yeah, like what's wrong with this TV show?
Yeah, but if you read this, if you read the actual script, the teleplay for that episode, the Sterling actually puts in the camera movements. He describes that you don't see the faces. And that's a big no-no in screenwriting now. So so back in the day, the writers were actually putting in the angles, and they were really kind of imagining how you would see the actual episode unfold. And that's something that, now that's really the director's job. And in fact, I mean, I'm sure you know this, and some folks out there who are listening to the show, is if you write a spec script, you don't put any kind of camera information, no kind of angles. In fact,
which
they
is
won't
so
read
hard.
your script. I know, it's very hard.
So
you
hard.
You have to figure out other strategies of like to communicate that kind of information. But if you do want to, for those that are out there, were you able to provide the link where they can download some of these episodes? There's a great website called Cinephilia and Beyond. And if you do a search on the website, you can find this episode that we just watched, or actually you guys just watched, and I watched through the lens in my mind's eye from the misty regions of my own imagination. You can download some of the most famous episodes, and you can read the actual script. And for those that are, maybe aspiring writers, or, are interested in seeing how stories are written, that's a great resource. It's a great website in general, in terms of the wealth of information that they have on film and television and cultural history as seen through those mediums.
Nice. So one last thing before we leave this episode, and actually it kind of touches on what you were saying with the camera angles and the shadows and things and the similarities with Psycho, is according to Wikipedia, that because of the camera angles and leaving out people's faces, this was supposedly the most difficult episode to film. And then the last thing that I loved about this, and like you even pointed, like when the doctor is unwrapping the bandages and he's like, look, whatever happens, like you're going to be fine. If it didn't work, you're going to go with them. And he puts his hand like on the back of her head like this to comfort her. Like he's like, you're okay. And even when she like runs down the hall and she ends up in the room with the man, he comes in and like holds her. And the director, apparently when he cast this episode, partly because you weren't going to be able to see people's faces, but because he wanted to make sure that he had the most sympathetic voices, he had his back to the actors the entire time he was casting. So he didn't even see them. He just based it on like their voices. So it's like from her experience that it's like, yes, this is a comforting human being who I think has my back. You get the part. So I thought that was very cool.
I did not know that. I did not know that. Well, you learn something new every day.
You do indeed.
You know, something that we should note is we got to give props to the makeup artists. I believe the makeup artist was William Tuttle, who was also the makeup artist in the original version of The Time Machine, the 1950s or early 60s version that was produced by George Powell. And all these people were on contract. So I believe that William Tuttle was on the MGM lot. And so, you know, when you're on contract, they tell you what show to go to work on. Right. So he was in the right place at the right time. But he came up with a very inventive, makeup design that is effective, and it still holds up, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, he becomes a kind of precursor to, you know, the makeup effects geniuses that we see today. People like Rick Baker, who won multiple Academy Awards, most notably for that 1981 classic, An American Werewolf in London, which was the first Oscar that was the introduction of that category of special makeup effects. You know, for those that, some trivia for those out there is Rod Serling was also one of the co-screenwriters of the original 1968 version of Planet of the Apes, which is also in my top. Yeah. And in fact, if you go and you rewatch that film, you can tell that the quality of the dialogue, the fact that it addresses social issues, you know, that's his voice. You know, you know, it's somewhat still unique. And he wrote most of the early drafts of the screenplay, and then they brought in a writer named Michael Wilson, who was one of the co-writers of Lawrence of Arabia, the classic film by David Lean, who I believe was a blacklisted writer. And so what's interesting is when you do, you know, like some of these films that came out during that era, that they don't get the credit of like the producers and the writers and the directors who took stands in terms of helping blacklisted writers that were not given work because of, we're kind of going on a tangent, but with the McCarthy hearings and
I'm not familiar with that, blacklisted writers at the time. I don't know. Tell me more about that.
Okay, well, in the 1950s, during the height of the Red Scare, where Americans and a lot of other people were afraid of the creeping dangers of communism. I was going to say capitalism, which might be the real danger. But back then, Joseph McCarthy, Senator Joseph McCarthy, one of the more notorious demagogues, and not the last to find a place in politics, he stirred up a lot of fear that there was allegedly a communist under every bed, and that we had to really worry. And so he had a series of hearings where he brought a lot of people from Hollywood, and they had to testify. And the writers who didn't testify or who refused to name names, they were blacklisted. They couldn't work. And so some of the more famous names like Dalton Trumbo, he would work under an alias. And in fact, he won an Academy Award for one of the films he wrote under a pseudonym. And
That's
while
amazing.
he was, so there's a whole bunch of writers.
Can't stop a writer from writing.
No, you can't. You can't. But then what you can do is you can stop them from their work getting made. And so a lot of these writers had to write under other names, under pseudonyms. I would have to double check, but I believe that Michael Wilson was one of those writers. So the fact that the producers of the original Planet of the Apes made a point to hire him to kind of punch up. They use the vernacular of screenwriting today, Serling's version of the script. That's a political stance, so, and the fact that, so you have this amazing writing team that makes one of the most iconic pieces of science fiction from the late 1960s. And I believe that Serling came up with sorry, spoiler alert, the iconic image of the Statue of Liberty at the end of the film Planet of the Apes, where we realized we were on Earth the whole time.
The whole time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all together now. Oh,
whoa.
Right.
yeah. Nice. That's awesome.
So because if you read the novel Planet of the Apes, that's not the case. That image is not in the novel at all.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. I have a game, and then I have some random questions. So the random questions, for the people who are watching, you are welcome to put your own answers in the chat. We'll all bond and get to know each other. Okay, so first question, and Neil, obviously you'll answer as well. What movie have you seen more times than any other movie, if you had to guess?
Well, am I supposed to answer or let the folks?
Yeah.
Oh,
What's your most watched movie, do you think?
Oh gosh. Okay.
You can pick like two if you're like, I can't.
Okay. Yeah. I've always loved Star Wars, and probably The Empire Strikes Back, which I think is the crown jewel of the Star Wars saga.
I feel like that's like a good.
And I've seen that movie so many times. I still watch it. It's like my go-to movie if because
that's
it
awesome.
just holds up. And then Planet of the Apes is one of them as well. And then, like, completely out of left field, David Lynch's Blue Velvet.
Really? Okay. I've not seen Blue Velvet. And Hassani, I don't think I've ever seen The Fifth Element.
Really?
So I guess I need to add both of those to my list.
You've seen Jurassic Park, right?
I have seen Jurassic Park. I actually saw that when they were like trying to get ready for the new one. They did screenings of it at the IMAX theater. And I went, and it was actually kind of uncomfortable to watch because it was just so big that you were like, blah. Yeah. But it was so funny because that shot when, oh God, what's his name? The one that's in all the things, Jeff Goldblum. When Jeff Goldblum appears on screen and his shirt's like open and he's in that shop that everybody's made a meme of, like he was just so big and the entire theater just went, yeah! It's like, yeah, Jeff Goldblum in IMAX. It was amazing.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
next
funny, what really quickly, like, oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to move us on to that. These are like little quick questions. So these are just little nuggets, and then we'll jump back into conversation. Okay. You have all of the money in the world to build your dream home entertainment room, like a movie or film screening room. Give me like a few little nuggets of what is in that room.
Oh, well, I think it would have to be built by the specs described in Ray Bradbury's novel, Fahrenheit 451. Where it's the room with the talking walls. And if this was somehow where since we're talking about science fiction, like that novel talks about how people would tune in to watch The Family, right? They would watch this soap opera where they would get to, contribute to the storyline. It's sort of an early choose your adventure. And Bradbury also wrote another short story called The Veldt, which kind of looks at the darker side of that, where it's a kind of virtual reality. So if I had unlimited sources, it would be kind of cool to have a room where you got immersed somehow in a three-dimensional way in the film, but you could experience it safely, and you would know you were safe. That's as close as I could kind of imagine.
That's amazing. That's perfect.
Okay.
That sounds great.
I'm curious what other people say.
I know. Well, nobody else answered that one. I do like, though, Daphne Kendricks, I assume related to you, said that her go-to movies would be Sound of Music and The Matrix. And I love how like so different those are. That's amazing. We also got Weekend at Bernie's. Classic. I don't know that would be my most played movie, but I've definitely seen it.
Yeah, The Matrix is my niece Ashley. I want to give a shout out to my niece. She's a big science fiction fan. Hey, Ashley. So she's into The Matrix. Yeah, let's raise the roof.
Yeah. Ooh. Do people still do that? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm definitely of the generation where I'm like, this feels natural.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, last question. What is the last movie that you saw in the theater before the pandemic? Before things got shut down, do you remember?
Okay, yeah. I'll tell you the last two. Okay, so this was like spring of or early summer 2020.
Okay.
And they were going to re-release Empire Strikes Back for the 40th anniversary.
Nice.
And that got me that I actually went to the theater ahead of time, a couple days before, and was like a reconnaissance mission where I went and talked to the manager. And then I was like, okay, I want to know the day that there's the least amount of people, like the time of day. And so then, you know, I basically went and checked out the theater ahead of time, asked the right questions. Does the theater have its own ventilation, or is the air coming from the other auditoriums? And so everything seemed to be fine. So then I ventured out and I went and saw Christopher Nolan's Tenet on the IMAX screen with two of my closest strangers.
Nice.
Right,
okay, so under normal circumstances, are you like I want the entire theater to myself, or are you like I want to be in there with like as many people as possible?
You know, I like the theatrical experience of being with a large crowd as long as people are there to watch the movie and, you know, and not talk through it and not text.
They're good audience members.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but there's something to be said about like when you are in an audience that is there and they are totally connected to the film. And like one of the best theatrical experiences in the last few years was A Quiet Place. You could hear a pin drop when that movie was playing. And I remember I didn't know what the movie was about. I just went and saw it on a whim.
Yeah.
And then
that's
the
my
audience,
favorite way to do it.
Yeah, and the audience just was connected. And for those that haven't seen that film, it's also science fiction, and it's a world where you can't make a sound or you might get killed by aliens. Yeah. And so the people have to learn to walk on, you know, basically they can't even use shoes. They have to walk barefoot. And then someone drops a bottle at the back of the theater and it rolls all the way down the auditorium, ricocheting off
like,
a seat.
Way to take me out of the moment.
Well, everybody jumped, you know, and then because we were also into the movie, it was like everybody was like, "Oh, who's making that noise?" Right? That was and that was such a memorable moment because not every movie you feel that if you make a noise, something's at stake. And I really miss going to the theater. You know, something's gets lost when you can't go to the movies, but they'll be back. They'll be back. I love sometimes going to the movies when I'm the only person there and I have the whole theater to myself. That's awesome. But then also being there when it's jam packed is awesome. As long as people are like good movie goers. I am not shy at all about like if somebody in front of me and over there is like playing on their phone. I'm like, can you please put your phone away? Like I will not have. I'm like, I paid $20 to be here, and I'm going to need you to turn off that light. Yeah. But I think just experiencing a story with an audience and getting to see how other people react
Like I went to a movie theater the drive-in is open. It's not quite the same. The drive-in's a little bit weird. That was a comment. Somebody said drive-in's open. It's not the same. I haven't actually been to a drive-in in a long time. It's on my list because there are some good drive-ins around Austin. But I was in Paris, France. I do not speak French, but I have seen enough French films that I'm like, yeah, I like French cinema. Why not? And so I went to this movie theater and I bought a ticket. I was actually very proud because I was like, somewhere in Paris, I'm going to say something in French and I want them to reply in French. Because I had always heard that French people like just don't like Americans. And when they can hear your accent, they're just like, ugh. Here's like they'll answer in English because they're just like, I'm not going to waste my time trying to speak French to you. So I was like, I just want to convince someone that I can speak French. And so I asked for one ticket, please, in French. And he responded in English or in French. And I was like, yes. And then I pulled out my student ID and I was like, do you have student discounts? And it was like, ugh, okay. But so I went in, it was like, there's no subtitles. I'm not going to understand any of the dialogue, but it was such a fascinating experience because there were times where like, something happened and it made me laugh and everybody else laughed. And I was like, ha, I got it. And then there were other times that I was watching and then everyone started cracking up and I was just like, what? You know? So it's always fascinating. There was a Trainwreck. Did you ever see Trainwreck, the Amy Schumer film?
No, I haven't. Is that any good?
It's adorable. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, but I saw it in New York City. It must have been opening weekend because the theater was packed. And there's a part like at the beginning, it's a series of like, you know, she's obviously had wild nights and she wakes up and is not entirely sure where she is. And she wakes up in this and she's like looking around. She's like, where am I? And the guy across the room goes, Long Island. And she goes, ugh. And everyone in the theater just like died laughing because we're in Manhattan, right? Like you get a little burned to Long Island and everyone's on your team. They're like, yeah, Long Island, boo. I don't know. Yeah, it's just like there's so much in experiencing something alongside people that you just don't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Oh,
that is true. And also if you watch a movie that's set in the town that you're living in, like if you ever got, like, I live in San Diego, California, and I remember seeing Almost Famous, the Cameron Crowe film, which is set in San Diego. And there's a kind of unspoken spark that goes through, you can feel it in the audience when they recognize certain locations, right? And so, you know, it like, feels, there's a kind of an extra layer of intimacy with the movie when you see places that you know. And there's something about that that's really special.
Which is, like humanizes it and makes it feel even more real that it's not, I don't know. Yeah. That's cool. Okay, cool. So the next episode we're going to jump into is To Serve Man. Hassani, will you do the links again one more time? And then it is I have it pulled up here. Season 3, episode 24. So if everyone wants to get your episode geared up and ready to go, we're going to watch this one. And then, Neil, do you have to tell me quick plugs for whatever things that you want people to like, give people just enough of a teaser that they're like, oh, I need to learn more. And then they're going to go to your website and learn more.
Okay. Well, I have 2 exhibitions coming up. The first one is opens May 8th and runs through July 30th. And that's going to be at the Bread and Salt Gallery in Barrio Logan. And it's going to be
San Diego. Did you say San Diego is where you are? Yes. Okay.
It's in San Diego, and it's the neighborhood's Barrio Logan in San Diego. It's just south of downtown San Diego, and the show's called Mirror Mirror: Lights, Camera, Dreams, and it's going to be an exhibition of my short films that I've done over the years, and they're going to be shown as video projections within the gallery space. So they're actually going to black out the windows. And so when you walk into the gallery, one of the walls will be like, or actually 2 of the walls will be like little movie screens, or actually big movie screens. And you'll get to experience these films playing on a loop. And that's awesome. So yeah, I'm really excited of kind of revisiting my own work, but in a gallery context. And then next fall, for those that happen to be, or want to make a trip to San Diego or Oceanside, I'm actually going to have my first solo museum exhibition at the Oceanside Museum of Art. Yeah. I feel really excited about it, and
That's awesome.
and the show's going to be called Temple of Story, and it's going to combine my love of drawing with my love of storytelling, and so it's going to be everything from video projections of drawings to analog drawings that are done by hand, some digital drawings, and then also a podcast potentially that you would tune into. And either you'll hear me reading the stories, or we might bring in a voice actor to record the stories that I wrote. So those are two things that I have coming up in 2021.
Nice. That is very cool.
Yeah. So the Temple of Story, I believe, opens October 9th and runs through February 2022.
Nice.
So I've got a busy schedule in the coming months.
I will, if I can find money, I will gladly travel literally anywhere. So maybe I'll end up in California. You never know.
That would be great.
Cool. All right, let's get the timestamp back up and ready to rock and roll. And then, we'll do the same thing. I'll kind of give you a little bit of guidance as to what's going on. This one, I found so many things that like little fun continuity bits or things that like a script supervisor would be like, and then this actually also had a lot of fun trivia. So I'll throw some of that out there as we go along. Cool. If everybody is ready, we're gonna hit play on 0. So it'll be 3, 2, 1, then play. Ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1, play.
So when they were making these episodes, we have to remember they didn't have a very big budget. So sometimes they would use stock footage. Yeah. So there's footage in this episode that's actually from other films. And like when they cut to shots of like other countries,
the UFO
or even the UFO is actually an inverted image from I think it's the movie's Earth versus the Flying Saucers. I believe it's a Ray Harryhausen stop motion image, but they flipped it upside down. It's towards the end of the episode.
There's a couple because here we go. There's a UFO. The UFO at the top is from The Day the Earth Stood Still, but with different sound effects. And then at the end of the film, it's from Earth versus the Flying Saucers, again with different sound effects.
Right, and that's the latter one is done by Ray Harryhausen, who was a real pioneer of stop motion animation. He did a lot of the early Sinbad adventure stories, not Sinbad the entertainer,
the comedian,
the more mythological hero. And Ray Harryhausen is amazing. It's sad that he didn't get a chance to do more, I don't even know if he knew that they used this. That would have been stock footage that the studio owned. Yeah. So right about now, I guess they should be if the flying saucer is flown overhead.
It's still he's not a doctor. What's his name? His last Chambers. Chambers is in his like cabin and he's got the mirror and the sink open. And
right.
We know he's frustrated, but we don't really know why. We don't, we know he's obviously in space going somewhere.
Right. And so then he's going to ask the candidates what time it is. Like, not like in how we do it.
Yeah.
What time?
And they just said 12 noon. Yeah. There's no time in space. He's like, what time is it on Earth? And they say 12 noon.
And then he says
like,
something.
It's a different time everywhere on Earth.
Yeah. And then he says, well, that would have been right about the time they showed up. And we should have been worrying. Something to that effect. And now we cut back to a flashback of how Mr. Chambers, we're going to find out. We're going to find out how did he land in this very sterile
environment
room on a spaceship headed to another galaxy. And now we should be at the UN. And
we're flashing back now. So we have this New York footage, which this is from 1940 something. based on the signs that were up. It was stock footage from 1949 based on the movies that were playing. And then we're at the UN in New York.
Right. And so now we should be in some kind of room where there's general sense of anxiety as various diplomats are arguing amongst
international
themselves.
Anxiety. Yep.
And
there's the UFO.
One of the delegates is saying, that these ships have landed in various countries, and then someone's going to rush into the room and whisper something in his ear, and then we're going to find out is that a ship has landed only a few blocks away. I love the intro to this episode, how they don't show the alien, only his shadow when he first walks into the room.
Yeah.
He's so tall that they just show the reactions of the people in the room.
Yeah. Well,
is it happening?
There's he hasn't walked in yet, so they're saying he's about to, but it's kind of that effect of like Jaws of like, is it better to show the monster or let people use their imagination? And in this case, it's like just seeing the reaction allows you to be like, oh my gosh, he's 30 feet tall, like that you can kind of go crazy. Whereas like with practical effects, there's only so much you can do, right? Like the actor is Richard Keel is 7'2".
Right. And to note, excellent choice of words. He played Jaws in two of the James Bond films, right?
Yeah.
He was
Jaws. Also, for people who don't have as a classic film reference, he was also in Happy Gilmore. He was.
I remember that.
Yeah, he was the tall guy that when Shooter McGavin is golfing, he like pulls it out. He's like, "Hey, Shooter," and he just like bends it, and he wears the shirt that's like, "Guns don't kill people, I kill people." Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s. I definitely saw Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison more times than probably any person should.
Happy Gilmore is the golfing one, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
The hockey / golf one. Yeah.
Yeah. That one's actually got some funny lines.
They're both. Yeah, they're both really funny, but it's like, it's the kind of comedy that it's like either you love it and you get it and you're into it, or you're just like, I just can't. And I love it. Like, I will eat that stuff up all day. Well, not all day. I have to be in the mood for it. But if I'm in the mood for it, I'm like, bring it on. I think Adam Sandler's brilliant. I love him.
Bob Barker's cameo in that is classic.
I forgot about that. I'll have to watch that again soon. All right, we've got Rod Serling on screen now.
Okay, so now we've been introduced to the shadow and the sort of like the towering figure of a Canaanite. And now Rod Serling should be talking about that we're about to meet a Christopher Columbus from another time and another
in a
state.
Fantastic jacket.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the classic narrators, and he wasn't a trained actor, like I'm trying to think of how he ended up landing that sort of ubiquitous narrator role. And
well, I mean, I wonder if it's just because it was his show that they were like, all right, like we need somebody to narrate, may as well be the person who knows.
Yeah, he just is a natural. He's a natural. I mean, with the cigarette and, because people always smoked in that time but he's just a natural. In fact, he became so well known because of these appearances that he would make cameo appearances on other TV shows. Where I think in one, I'm trying to remember what show it was. It was the Jack Benny show, where he plays a character, Mr. Zone, which of course everybody would have known he was the host of the Twilight Zone. So now, where are we in the film or the episode? What happens on screen?
So we've got all the UN people gathered around and they're listening while he talks from his brain. And the Secretary General is like, well, how do we know that we can trust you? What's your deal?
All right.
What's the deal with Kahneman? Kahneman. that was my best Jerry Seinfeld.
So yeah, and then the Kahneman is like, well, we're here. There is no motive. I mean, we're here to help you, right? And so this episode's so clever in its misdirection. This is actually based on a short story by a writer named Damon Knight, who used to teach science fiction writing at the Clarion Workshops, which was a series of workshops for aspiring science fiction and fantasy writers. And he actually wrote a very good book on how to write short fiction. I can't remember the title of it, but he wrote the original short story and Serling adapted it. So it's interesting that the TV version is way more famous than the original short story.
Yeah. Huh.
So has he left the book behind?
Not yet. So he has it in his hands. He's moving toward the table. That was the only thing that sort of I don't know that it bothered me with the episode or what it was. Like there were several people online. Okay, so Mark Scott Zicree, who I guess I don't remember who he is, but he was like, it's basically impossible that a human could have translated this book because we didn't have any kind of code to go off of, and they would have been way smarter than us. And also, well, to spoil later, it's impossible that this word could have meant multiple things. Like the odds that they would have had the same one word that means two things, like that's just not a thing. But for me, it was like, it seemed so intentional that he sets the book down and he leaves it. So in my mind, I was like, oh, he wants them to have this. Like he's trying to, it's like he's leaving this as a gift that it's like, by the time you decode this, then it will be, whether his intentions were good or bad, I thought it was like, here's a clue. And once you solve it, you'll be better informed.
Right.
That was my little weird take on it. But
I always wondered if it was a library book from another galaxy.
Yeah. It's impossible to translate and understand my diary.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so I don't know where this happens. Somebody else in this episode directly speaks to the camera. Is it Chambers? Does Chambers talk to the camera? Yeah, Chambers breaks the fourth wall. And he does it. He does it at the very end, and he talks to the audience. Okay, because this is the only episode in the entire series where anybody besides Serling talks directly to the camera.
There is another episode where Serling, really? Yeah, there's an episode where Serling plays himself. And it's about a writer who can invent realities by dictating into a microphone. And so then at the end of the episode, through the story, we find out that this writer, everyone in his life is invented. And so all he has to do is speak and describe them into a tape recorder. And then he cuts out the piece of tape and puts it in an envelope. And if he wants them to disappear, he just throws it into the fireplace. And so the episode ends where he actually has an envelope with Rod Serling's name on it. And he looks into the camera and then he throws the envelope into the fireplace. And then Serling goes up in a puff of smoke.
But is it still Serling who looks to the camera? Or it's a different actor who looks to the camera?
My memory of it is that it's done in a way where they're both kind of self-conscious that there's an audience there. So it is kind of what we call a meta moment.
Yeah.
Where, the movie is like, or the TV show is wanting us to be self-conscious that we're watching a TV show. And then, of course, the moment that you described, that's going to come at the very end of this, this great episode.
Yeah.
So I think after he leave the book, he leaves the book behind. Then we cut
the two military officials are now talking to Chambers, and he's like, "Well, I'll never be able to get through this." And he's like, "They're like, how many people do you need?" He was like, "It doesn't matter. We had this many people to decode the Japanese message." Da 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 da. Yeah. I'm going to reenact the entire episode. That's what this show is going to be now. I'm going to be like, "Well, sir, what do you got for me?" Well, what I was going to... It's going to be terrible. I'm going to ruin this show.
I do remember like the military guy going, I want to know exactly or something precisely what's in that book. Yeah. And then Mr. Chambers is like, are we going to look a gift horse in the mouth? Something to the extent is that there's going to be peace on earth and so forth. And you guys are going to be out of a job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people don't talk that way, right? But
Yeah.
it's the flourishes of it in the
Yeah,
context of
yeah.
this type of story that it works.
Yep. Well, and
And so,
that was one of the things that was on some list that was he specifically references Argentina as like, oh, the land and soil was totally barren and then they filled it with vitamins and now it's da 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 da. But actually,
right.
Argentina in real life is one of the top producers of, I have the list, wheat, soy, giants. I don't think that grains, I think is what that word is supposed to be. They put out a lot of giants, fruits, vegetables, and beef cattle. And adding vitamins to soil actually doesn't do anything. It's just nutrients that you need to add to soil.
Okay. Well, they didn't get to.
But they didn't have Wikipedia back then, so how could they have known?
Yeah, how could they have known exactly? And so, has the young lady come in with the title?
She just walked in right now. Yeah.
Okay. And so then she's like, "We licked the title or something," and then it's like, okay, this makes the cheese.
Man.
This makes the cheese a little more binding. To serve man, I certainly hope so. This episode's perfectly paced, right?
Yeah.
So we've been teased with the arrival of invaders. Well, not necessarily invaders from another planet, but travelers from some other galaxy, and they seem to be bestowing all these wonderful gifts that are going to be to help humanity move forward. Yeah, and it's interesting that they use footage from Day the Earth Stood Still, because that opens in a similar way, right? Flying saucer lands in Washington, and it's surrounded by the military. Tanks roll up into this park, and then Klaatu, played by Michael Rennie, has this object in his hand that he's going to offer, and he raises it, and a soldier shoots him, and the object breaks. And then what happens is that it was a gift from the cosmos that would have helped civilization, or a human civilization, and it broke. So, somebody got fired.
Yeah, it was the new server. He had it on his tray and he just spun too fast.
Yep.
Man, that's wild.
So and I think that Mr. Chambers, he describes these 7-foot enigmas, Kris Kringles from another planet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's such great lines of like just the writing. I mean, it just sings. It's just really fun and inventive.
It's awesome.
And so now, are they doing the lie detector test?
They are.
Okay. So then, of course, this is where in storytelling you have to give some exposition, right? Yeah. So the doctor is explaining how the lie detector works, and then they give him a question that the candidate obviously answers as incorrect, so we could see that the instrument is working properly.
Our baseline. Yep.
Yeah. So that should be happening right about now. It's funny. Richard Keel was an underrated actor. Obviously he had to get cast for parts that need somebody 7 feet tall or plus. So there's not a lot of roles for that. He made his mark. I mean, he's one of the most memorable villains in the Roger Moore James Bond films, right? He was in The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. And
his credits were massive. Like, when I looked him up, like it was like you just kept scrolling and scrolling, and there was just more and more. His last film was Tangled. He was one of the voices in Tangled.
Oh, he was? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, he passed away a few years ago, and he was a really special actor.
Yeah. Did you know that in the original story, the Canamitz were actually super short and they looked like pigs that walked upright, but because Twilight Zone already had an episode that had pig faces, they were like, we need something totally different, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah, I've read the original story, and here's a case where the episode is better than the original short story. Nice. It has the same punchline, but it's just not as effective as how it's visualized in this episode. Where here's another case where I recently read Jerome Bixby's short story, It's a Good Life, which was also adapted into one of the more beloved episodes of The Twilight Zone. And in that case, the short story by Bixby is far more terrifying than the episode, because there's things in the short story that are very, very disturbing. Yeah. But I would say check out both. They both work.
Okay, wait, I'm going to pause you. They're all in line to get on this ship, and this man with this mustache looks like the father or grandfather of Benedict Cumberbatch. I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, is that Benedict Cumberbatch, and has he never aged? Anyway, sorry, that was the one that I was like, I gotta point that one out.
and so I think there's the Soviet delegate or diplomat, and he's sort of the pushy character, and he's eating some candy out of a bag or something. Yep,
100%. That's literally what I'm seeing.
And then he's like, out of the way, I have diplomatic visa, right? And so it's interesting how at some point Chambers is going to talk about how human beings have this remarkable ease to get accustomed to change. And this is right around the time that the early astronauts, circling the globe. Of course, the Russians beat us to getting a man into space, and there's a reference to that's going to come in some of the dialogue a little bit later. So this is obviously a period piece, because it's referencing world events that the people that would have seen this when it first aired would know exactly what he was talking about.
Yep.
So what's happening now?
She's picking up the newspaper, which is an actual LA Times newspaper from 1961.
Oh, okay. All right. And
June
so he's
14th, specifically.
I think he's got some kind of cat's cradle.
He was playing with the cat's cradle. Is that relevant? Yeah. What's that all about?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't think it's relevant. I think it was like what they tell, what sometimes an actor is, they give an actor, quote, business to do, unquote, which is do something with your hands, Yeah. What would that character do?
If he's not, what is he doing? Why is he there? Is he literally just sitting there boy, I hope that woman comes in soon.
Right.
At least if he's got the cat's cradle and the newspaper's there, you're like, oh, he was reading the paper, and then he was like, I'm going to play with a string now.
Well, I think maybe that's to say that he's because they've disarmed a lot of the armies, and everyone thinks that it's safe. He has nothing to do. So if he's playing this little game by himself,
child's game.
I guess then maybe that was the director's decision.
Yeah, I could see that.
So she's telling him something about that there's a 10-year exchange program, and they're both on the list.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of moving towards the conclusion of this particular episode. I think now it's going to cut to him in line to the spaceship. And he's all eager, happy to leave the planet Earth behind. But then wait for it. She should be coming.
Okay, so hang on. They're still in the office. Okay, now he's in line.
Okay,
and he's like, aha. He's got this grin. Oh, and the two of the two Richard Keels, that was like a split screen magic trick that they did to have him in two places. Okay, now she's here. Mr. Chambers.
Hey, Mr. Chambers, don't get on that ship. The book. It's a cookbook.
It's a cookbook. And that line is apparently referenced in a ton of different TV shows and movies and things.
I remember the first time seeing that as a kid and just what? Oh, and then of course he's there. They raise the elevator or the stairs, and he's stuck on the ship. I guess he doesn't have a return ticket.
Off he goes. Yeah. that 10-year exchange program. There's no
I think it's going to go a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Or significantly shorter.
Right.
Depending how you think of it. Delicious. Yep. So now they're trying to feed him, and now we know, like, oh, they really want him to eat because they want to fatten him up.
Right. And so now we're back to the scene at the beginning, right? So he's
Yep.
it's the flashbacks have been have concluded, and now he's going to break the fourth wall, and he's going to address the audience.
Wait, hang on. I want to point this out. So watch, as Richard Keel leaves the room, he has to duck down, which that's one of the few continuity things where it's like, oh, they didn't think about that, because if it's a spaceship for people who are 7'2", the door would have been tall enough. And now he's addressing the camera directly.
Okay. And so now he's asking us if we're still on Earth or on a ship like him.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter, because sooner or later we'll all be on the menu.
Yeah.
And I love this closing line with Serling, where he's like something to the effect of from the ruler of a planet to an ingredient in someone's soup.
Yep. That was extremely well timed. Well done, Neil. Okay, so a couple other fun things that I found. The little audio clip of at the beginning when he asks what time is it and it says noon. There was a radio station in Pasadena that would use that every day at noon. They would play that clip, which I just think is funny. Also, Lloyd Bachner, who played Chambers, actually parodied his role in Naked Gun 2.5.
Oh, he did?
I thought that was pretty fun. I'm sure that I saw Naked Gun 2.5, but I do not remember it. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'll have to go back and watch that one again.
I'm actually a really big fan of Police Squad, which was the original TV show before they started making the Naked Gun films.
Okay,
and it's the same characters, but it wasn't on the air very long. It's I think it's the Zucker brothers. It's the comedians who made Airplane from 1980.
Oh, yeah.
The comedy Airplane. Yeah.
That's such a great movie.
That is a great movie.
It's like a classic of classics.
Oh yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite comedies. Is Airplane. That's one of the few movies I saw that as a kid, and I laughed so hard and so frequently that when I walked out of the theater, I paid for another ticket and went back.
You're like, I gotta go again. Hit me again.
And it was still funny.
Yep. Have you heard of Odd Squad? It's a kids show on PBS.
No, I haven't heard that.
They made a theatrical version of it that toured around the country, and I was in that. But the humor in that is very similar to Airplane, like to the point that the first time we did our table read, which was the first time we each got to read the entire script, I laughed so hard. I was like crying. I had one line of dialogue that I literally, I was laughing so hard that it took me a long time to get the line out. It was so funny. It's a fun, silly, lighthearted show, but it's like child agents who solve odd occurrences using math. So it teaches them valuable skill sets while also solving crimes anyway, every time I hear people talk about Airplane, I'm like, you've got to watch this children's show. And people are like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, just trust me. I had the one other fun little trivia nugget that I found was by Hassani. Hassani has to check out. Neil is going to come back. He is a fountain of interesting content. I agree. The one last little nugget I found, a sci-fi author named George H. Is it Skithers? Does that ring any bells for you?
Oh, I couldn't hear that. George what?
George H. Skithers or Sithers, or I don't know. But he wrote a cookbook. He wrote a cookbook that actually uses humans as an ingredient, and he called it To Serve Mankind, or To Serve Man, a cookbook for people. And the Library of Congress actually classifies it not as a satire, parody, or literature, but as a cookbook. So either according to IMDb, the librarian either didn't have a clue or they had a sense of humor. I was like,
Is that
that's
real?
interesting. Yeah, it's an
Wow.
actual. I mean, I assume that this author didn't actually eat humans and
Let's
prepare
hope
them in
not.
the meals, but yeah, but it was like the little punny references in the names of all the recipes.
I guess he'd be the Julia Childs for cannibals, all right? I mean,
Yeah. Be Julia Childs, but where you're cooking childs.
right.
That's great. Well, this was fantastic. I'm so glad that you joined me, and I'm gonna figure out how to use my other setup so that we can do this and we can get your face on here and you can watch with us, and it's gonna be amazing. And we'll do Psycho next time you come and join us. I kind of love the idea because you were making connections between the movie Get Out and Rosemary's Baby. I was like,
Yeah.
I kind of love the idea of doing like paired episodes where it's like 1 week we watch Get Out and I have one guest, and then the next week we watch Rosemary's Baby and you're my guest and you help make that it's like, oh, see, remember that thing that happened in that one? It happened here.
Yeah, well, I'd love to do
I
it.
love the idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely.
And Rosemary's Baby is probably my favorite horror film. And
Nice.
so I would love to do it.
Okay, good. It's a date. We're going to make it happen. Awesome. Well, okay, before we go, I want to plug that next week my friend Desi Waters is going to join me. I don't know what we're watching yet. She has not informed me, but it's going to probably be real gay and have plenty of ladies in it. I always do the Bechdel test on things, and it's not necessarily that it has to pass the Bechdel test, but the eye of the beholder did pass the Bechdel test because you had the female patient who talked to a female nurse. They didn't talk about men. So that one passed. But I think actually To Serve Man did not pass because there was really only one woman and she only talked to men because there weren't other women. So,
well, wait a minute. There is a woman that's waiting in line when
in the line, there's yes,
but there wasn't a lot of characters.
Yeah, the two women, there's never like two women that talk on their own and they don't talk about men. So
Okay,
I don't know. What are you going to do? But
Yeah.
it's, I think the Bechdel test is useful just to like, when you look at like films coming out in Hollywood and you're like, wow, of the 20 movies coming out this month, one passes the Bechdel test. That's problematic. But so, and then I also try to look at diversity in things, which obviously this was made in the 1960s. So it's not going to do great with diversity, but it gets on those themes that I think helped to shift people's perspectives and create more opportunities for diversity. So I think even if it doesn't pass the Bechdel test, and even if it's mostly white cast, it's doing a really great job to try to, open people's minds up and make us all a little bit more friendly and empathetic toward one another. So,
but to Rod Serling's credit, there is a couple episodes. In fact, I think it's called The Big Tall Wish, and that episode has a completely African American cast, and I believe he had to fight for that.
Big Tall what? Wish?
The Big Tall Wish, and it's about a little boy who makes a wish that this boxer that lives in his building will win this prize fight, and
cool.
And so it's kind of a lovely little chestnut about wish fulfillment and dreams.
Nice.
And but I mean, he had to fight for to be able to have cast members that were people of color.
Yeah.
And also there's an episode where he, just in light of, not to leave on a serious note, but in light of all the, recent wave of sadly Asian hate crimes that, Serling was a paratrooper in World War II, and he fought in the Pacific. And after the war, even though he was haunted by nightmares, he never demonized the Japanese. And so, in fact, there's several episodes that are set during World War II where he looks at that side of the conflict and he acknowledges their humanity. And I think he was one of the great humanists of the last really golden age of television.
That's great.
Well, this was fun. Despite
Yeah,
our technical
I-
errors.
I think that was a great note to end on. Write stories that bring people together and open people's eyes and hopefully make us all better for having enjoyed the story and heard the story.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, everyone go check out Neil's website so you can see his exhibits coming up soon. And I'll be back next Thursday with my friend Desi and something. And yeah, thank you so much, Neil, for joining me. This was fantastic.
No, you're very welcome, and thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Have a good night, and I'll see you at the Writers Cafe soon.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.